Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 23rd of September 2019, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. Joining me in the studio today, Patrick Henningsen from 21st Century Wire. Welcome to the programme.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And we have a special guest, Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, who'll be joining us a little later in the programme, a few minutes' time. Now, we're going to begin today with Boris, who is off to the United Nations General Assembly in New York. As he says, the huge great festival of diplomacy. Is that how you see it?
It's certainly a lot of things. That would probably be an apt description, actually. It's a lot of parties, a lot of
Glastonbury for diplomats.
Social events. A bit like the Labour Party's conference in Brighton this week,
right?
But in New York with diplomats. Yes.
Okay, so he says he's going to be meeting EU leaders while he's there to continue discussions on Brexit, but he doesn't think there's going to be any breakthrough. He also is meeting with obviously US officials and so on. I don't know whether he's meeting with Trump. No doubt Israel as well, because they're going to discuss the Gulf, and that means Iran, which we'll come on to in 1 second. Perhaps in preparation for another Gulf War. And he will be meeting with the Iranian president. Now, that went well the last time they met, and of course that was over, I'm being slightly sarcastic there, that was over Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, the British Iranian national who was allegedly a journalist, currently in prison in Iran for spying. So it'll probably go well this time as well, because here's what he said. I can tell you that the UK is attributing responsibility with a very high degree of probability to Iran for the Aramco attacks. So this is, of course, Theresa May's rapid response mechanism at work here, where you attribute responsibility with no evidence whatsoever. And then you say that, well, we believe with a high degree of probability that it was Iran, so that's who it is.
Well, the interesting thing about this story, Mike, is that the immediate reaction is that the U.S. and the rapid response countries blaming Iran immediately without presenting any real evidence that the attacks came from Iran, and yet Saudi is still foraging around looking for the actual forensic evidence to pin it on Iran. In other words, to say the attacks came from Iran. And to make it even more confusing, Mike, Saudi launches retaliatory airstrikes against Yemen to prevent further drone attacks when they just hit the port of Hudaydah, which is under siege at the moment. So I think that they've got their wires crossed between Riyadh, London, and Washington on this. And I dare say, Mike, that the U.S. has painted itself into a very awkward corner by taking the position it took immediately after the attack.
Well, Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, will be there as well. This is what he had to say. Our message to the United Nations is that we will lead by example. That's the UK, will lead by example and work tirelessly to strengthen the rules-based international system, to tackle climate change, protect journalists from attack, and uphold freedom of navigation on the high seas. I'm not clear whether that's something to do with Iran or whether it's to do with China, but perhaps we'll be coming onto that a little later as well. But perhaps in time for the meeting with Boris Johnson, the Iranian government has decided to release the seized British oil tanker. This is the Chinese media here saying that Iran released British oil tanker, the Stena Impero, detained in the Strait of Hormuz in July for maritime violations. The Iranian news agency reported on Sunday. So the general manager of Iran's Maritime and Ports Organization confirmed the release of the tanker and said that the vessel would start its voyage from Iran's Bandar Abbas port into international waters soon. But Iran says that they have ruled out, according to this article, any link between Stena Impero's case and the British seizure of Iranian supertanker Grace 1 off the coast of Gibraltar. I haven't heard them say that before. That seems like a strange position to take.
I can see how they might want to frame it that way, Mike, because there were actually two separate incidents. I think what they're trying to do is saying that they had a right to seize the British tanker based on the maritime rules that would govern normal traffic in the Persian Gulf. So they're trying not to conflate the two and not turn it into a sort of diplomatic or a geopolitical tit for tat. But in reality, we could look at the timing of both of those events to say that they are absolutely related. And Iran is definitely not backing down in light of what the British had done when it seized the Grace 1. off the coast of Gibraltar. So.
Well, you were saying that the US has backed itself into a corner potentially here. This is your own website, 21st Century Wire. Latest Trump to deploy more US troops and equipment to Saudi Arabia and UAE.
Well, this announcement was made over the weekend, and so the United States is sending more troops, and according to the White House, these are mainly to do with defensive measures. We're talking about missile defense, surface-to-air missile batteries, probably Patriot missile batteries, which are sold and managed by the United States. The U.S. also installed and runs the Iron Dome in Israel. A lot of people don't know that. That's the United States. The Pentagon does that. So this is what they're flogging to Saudi Arabia, and no doubt they're looking to sell even more equipment to the UAE and to Saudi Arabia to take advantage of this crisis to basically see what other wares they can flog the Saudis, and the Saudis are all too willing to open their wallets and buy just about anything that's on offer, because the fact of the matter is they can't even defend their essential vital infrastructure. The one thing that makes them a regional power is their oil and gas production, and their main facility, they couldn't even defend it from the Yemeni resistance forces, which are a ragtag bunch of rebel fighters in comparison to what other countries have in their sort of traditional military arsenal. And the Washington Post, this is stunning. The Washington Post have done an op-ed from the editors, Mike, from the editors, and the headline is, "Should U.S. troops put their lives on the line for Saudi Arabia?" I mean, where has this been over the last 4.5 years? The war in Yemen was prosecuted by Barack Obama in March of 2015, and it's been 4.5 years, and they've pounded Yemen for 4.5 years, and finally, it's taken 4.5 years to wake the Washington Post up out of its slumber, and really it has to do probably the difference in presidents, because this was verboten under Barack Obama. So that's amazing development in the media there.
Okay, so let's move on. Not so fast. China's $400 billion Iran investment may be a problem for U.S. war planners.
Well, this is something that a lot of people aren't really aware of, is that China has a major stake in Iran. Iran sits at the hub of China's Belt and Road project. They are the gateway between Asia and Europe, and hence China is wanting to invest, I don't know, something like $230 million to update and modernize their oil and gas infrastructure, but also their infrastructure in terms of transport and roads. We'll talk more about that on the Extra Time segment later on after the program. But this does also feed into, and we can look at the Belt and Road map there. You can see Iran is the key gateway. So in terms of keeping Iran down as a regional power in the Middle East, this is something the U.S. is keen to do. That's not just about helping Saudi Arabia and helping Israel, although those are also reasons. It's about also hurting China and slowing down the progress of China's Belt and Road Initiative.
So I asked the question about Dominic Raab's statement with respect to the high seas. Was he talking about the Straits of Hormuz, or was he talking about the South China Sea? He may have been talking about both.
And he's talking about the Horn of Africa. He's talking about the Suez Canal. He's talking about all these, but especially in the Far East, Mike, around Indonesia, around Thailand, around where China is underbelly is situated. Very important routes from Myanmar as well. There's port projects scheduled to be built from Myanmar. We'll talk more about this in the Extra Time segment. But this leads on nicely, Mike, to something that we'll also discuss later, but people should be aware of. This film up on 21stCenturyWire.com. This is by award-winning filmmaker John Pilger. This was released in 2016, and it didn't get a lot of traction. People didn't really take notice of it at the time. It's called The Coming War with China. The reason it didn't get a lot of traction at the time, because the Syrian war was in full swing, and also there were other sort of crises abound around the world at the time. Russia was, Russiagate was at its sort of height at that time. So everyone's, in terms of the geopolitical enemy of the U.S., everyone's talking about Russia, and what was going on in Syria. No one was talking about China. This just shows you how far ahead of the game that John Pilger was, to have had the foresight to put this amazing documentary together in 2016. We've got it up on 21st Century Wire. It's just been re-released in its full length online now with another distribution company, but it's available now for viewing.
Okay. Okay, well, we're going to bring Dilyana Gaytandzhieva onto the program in 1 second. I just want to introduce it with this because this is the NCTJ. This is an organisation in the UK that trains journalists, and they were hosting an event at the end of last week, their diversity event, and Dame Frances Cairncross is speaking now. Of course, she is the person who ran the Cairncross Review into the sustainability of the press in the UK, and one of her suggestions was that there should be some kind of government support for the press. But the main question she was asking on this, Patrick, at this event, which was held at Reuters at Canary Wharf, was, well, what she said was the only question that really matters, how do you get people to pay for the news? And it seems to me, Patrick, you may have a different view, but I suspect not. It seems to me that one way that you get people to pay for the news is to produce news that people actually want, to produce a product that people actually want. And if you want to produce a product that people actually want, you need to invest in proper investigative reporting, such as the story we're about to report in 1 second.
And not just invest in proper investigative reporting, Mike, but do investigative reporting. They do a lot of faux investigative reporting in the mainstream right now, but they're not really challenging the real centers of power. And I think a lot of that's being done in the independent media. And here is a story that has just surfaced only a couple of weeks ago. This is by our guest, Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, and this is a 3-part series here. And this is under the banner of Arms Watch. This is a new organization founded by Dilyana, and what's revealed is U.S. weapons trafficking to terrorists in Syria, in Yemen, and this is a follow-on from a previous investigation that Dilyana had done, many investigations, in fact, from 2017 to 2018, and it's a 3-part series, and it's stunning, Mike, and the evidence, the documents, photographic evidence, matching up munitions from ISIS propaganda videos, to actual consignments and documents that were leaked that Dilyana has managed to go through and put this story together. It's actually stunning, and we've got her on the line at the moment. So we want to welcome our guest, Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, investigative journalist from Bulgaria. Hello, Dilyana.
Hello, thank you for having me on your program.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Dilyana. And first and foremost, we want to say this is congratulations on this report. It's quite dense and quite big in terms of material, and it's a 3-part series. You've broken it up into 3 parts on armswatch.com. You can watch that now. By the way, Dilyana, your website was attacked, was it not, just a week ago?
Yes, when I published the 3rd part of this investigation, including leaked passports of arms dealers and alleged CIA and Saudi agents, also alleged corruption scandal involving Serbian Vice Prime Minister's father in arms deals with Saudi Arabia with weapons for ISIS in Yemen. And literally just an hour later, somebody tagged the Serbian Vice Prime Minister to a post with a link to this investigation to my site. And my site was DDoSed literally 30 minutes later, and there were 2 DDoS attacks against Arms Watch in the span of just probably 6 hours. But luckily, my hosting provider coped with the situation. So the attack was coming from Serbia because obviously somebody in Serbia didn't want people in Serbia to know the truth and to read these documents. So we blocked Serbia, all Serbian IPs from accessing Arms Watch. And actually these people succeeded in their goal to prevent Serbian people from accessing the site and reading the documents. Luckily, now there is other option that enables people to access blocked sites on in their countries. They use VPN, and this news spread all over Serbia, and it became a huge scandal there because the Serbian vice prime minister's father sold weapons, state weapons, at a much lower price. He purchased these weapons at state weapons at a much lower price and sold them at higher price via an offshore company registered on the British Virgin Islands to the Ministry of Saudi Arabia. Later on, these weapons appeared in a recent video published by Islamic State in Yemen. But this is not only the only reason why this investigation is somehow uh, stopped from getting attention because I was contacted by Western journalists from mainstream media. They are well aware that these documents are published. There was a leak from the Serbian state-owned arms manufacturer Krusik, and that these documents are absolutely real because neither the Pentagon nor the state arms factory have commented so far. Nobody has denied the authenticity of these documents. There was only one statement published by the Serbian Ministry of Defense, with which they just uh, said, quote, "We don't export weapons to Yemen." But they never denied the authenticity of these documents, and that I have provided. So I've been doing the last few days is to send a lot of letters, emails to the Syrian prosecutors, to the office of the Croatian state attorney, and hopefully I would be able to inform the public in the United States or the authorities in the United States, and probably will help me because I can't imagine that people in the United States are not allowed to know what their government has been doing under the pretext of fighting terrorism. This government is secretly supporting the very same terrorists, the Islamic State. In Yemen, in this case, they fight them in Syria, but support them in Yemen, and this has been documented by videos and photos published by the terrorists themselves.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a stunning expose. And let's just break down some of the parts of this, Mike, real quick. So we're looking at this three-part series. This is available at Arms Watch. Part 1, Islamic State weapons in Yemen traced back to the U.S. government. Serbian files, which Dilyana just broke down and explained here. And just a quote from here, this article, while U.S. President Donald Trump boasts about the defeat of Islamic State in Syria, U.S. government purchased weapons appear in the hands of Islamic State terrorists in Yemen. These documents expose the biggest lie in the U.S. foreign policy, officially fighting terrorism while secretly supporting it. And there's the proof right there. These are the mortar shells which are traced right back to the Syrian arms manufacturer and also moved and handled by middlemen, were under contract for the U.S. Department of Defense. The documents are in this article. The whole chain of custody of this stock is more or less proven here, and you can see the end user is ISIS right here. So this is paid for by the U.S. taxpayers. And moving on to part 2 is even more interesting. We're getting now into the bigger operation, which is related to train and equip. U.S. Task Force Smoking Gun smuggles weapons to Syria. Again, the Serbian files, part 2. And in this particular part of the report, it says new leaked documents exposed for the first time a secret U.S. Special Operations Command.
Yeah.
So it was been deployed in Croatia since 2017 and tasked with diverting tons of arms and munitions to Europe in Syria. And then this was interesting on this particular part, Mike. How she was able to connect the dots here was because they're actually given an award, some of these individuals here, for their role in Syria's train and equip program the U.S. government had with the so-called rebels in Syria, and also says in Iraq as well. So I'm wondering which rebels were in Iraq. I think only ISIS was in Iraq, Mike. So I just want to go back to Dilyana. So Dilyana, you were able to sort of connect the dots here because the actual people involved in the trafficking received awards for their work by the U.S. government, correct?
Yes, how I proved that this U.S. task force smoking gun that has been deployed in Croatia since 2017 was has been actually tasked with diverting arms and ammunition to Syria because in the leaked documents I discovered passports of U.S. government officials and U.S. private contractors working under a Pentagon program. At that point, I didn't know what exactly this program was. What I did know, though, was that all these people visited the Serbian state-owned arms factory. They ordered, inspected, and accepted huge quantities of mortar shells and all kinds of weapons, and they exported them to Croatia in a secret arms depot that was about 30 kilometers from Rijeka Airport. Rijeka Airport, this is a Croatian airport, from where American carriers transported this Serbian weapon, not only Serbian, probably this is a Pentagon hub for Europe, from where all possible weapons and mortar shells, rockets, etc. They were transported via Qatar to Syria. How I knew that? Because in leaked documents, these people involved in this process, because they applied for permission to cruise it, this is the Serbian state arms factory, to access the military facility. And applying for this access, they needed to provide their passports. This is a normal security procedure, security check that must be carried out. So this is how I got their passports, scanned passports. After I got their passports, I tried to find out who these people were. And also in the document, it was indicated what their position was. One of them, one American, was a Pentagon inspector, and he came to inspect and accept weapons on behalf of the government. Another two American nationals, they were also involved in this program, and their names appeared in a short statement released by the U.S. Central Command in 2017. And in this statement, these two American nationals were listed as recipients of a special U.S. Central Command award in recognition of their support to the Pentagon Train and program. This is the program for um, terrorists in Syria. Let's name them with their names, terrorists in Syria. No matter that they call them rebels or fighters against ISIS. Actually, it turns out that the U.S. government arms the the same ISIS uh, before in Syria, now in Yemen.
Yeah, and also in part three, what Dilyana was just mentioning here, this is available also in part three of the investigation series here up at Arms Watch. Leaked arms dealers' passports reveal who supplies terrorists in Yemen. Again, part of the Serbian Files investigation by Dilyana. And in the report, leaked documents include scanned passports of U.S., Saudi, and UAE arms dealers and government officials, and it exposes their role in the practice. So this is hugely problematic on many levels for the United States, who claims to be fighting terrorism in the region here. And I might add also that if we look at in 2017, Tulsi Gabbard tabled a bill as Congresswoman, Stop Arming Terrorists Bill of 2017. And this bill was explicit about basically stopping the practice of shipping weapons, giving support to what are effectively terrorist groups, the listed, designated terrorist groups like HTS, Shabbat al-Nusra, like ISIS. And there's been evidence in the past that sort of has shown this. Dilyana's reporting as well has also shown this in the past. But this is absolutely clear that there's a problem here, no matter what sort of denials are given by government officials. And here's Congressman Gabbard's website, and this is what she says on her website: Stop Arming Terrorists Act. This is House Resolution 608. By the way, a lot of people oppose this. I'm sure John McCain would have opposed it if he was in Congress, but he was in the Senate at the time. But this bill would stop the U.S. government from using taxpayer dollars to directly or indirectly support groups who are allied with and are supporting terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda in their war to overthrow the Syrian government. The legislation is based on congressional action during the Iran-Contra affair to stop the CIA's illegal arming of rebels in Nicaragua. So it all comes full circle to the Iran-Contra affair, arms to the Contras in the 1980s. This is more or less the same program, but in a different time frame, in a different part of the world, and using different methods in order to traffic the weapons halfway across the globe into conflict zones. And just back to Dilyana, and Dilyana, there was a website called polygraph.info, and they wrote a piece refuting your reports. And what they said is interesting. They've said, however, she did not provide documentation showing that Alliance Tech Systems had purchased ARSF rifles. These are Bulgarian arms. This is what they've said. And they said, in any case, the presence of Bulgarian manufactured weapons in the Middle East is nothing new. The Balkan Investigative Reporting Network, BIRN, this is, I believe, a Soros-funded media outlet, had reported in 2015 that Saudi Arabia and the UAE had bought, quote, large quantities of weapons and munitions from Bulgaria over the past 2 years, almost certainly for use by local forces they support in the war in Syria and possibly also the conflict in Yemen. So by trying to debunk your report, they seem to be confirming what you've reported, because those local forces in Syria and Yemen appear to be only two options, which are Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So it's an interesting attack. By the way, this is a U.S. government-funded. This is an outgrowth of Radio Free Europe. They're called polygraph.info, and they're listed by Google as a trusted news source. So if you Google Dilyana's report, you get the U.S. government-funded media outlet comes right at the top of your search, which I think that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Google, for that. Dilyana, what did you think about Polygraph's attack on your reporting?
I was shocked, to say the least, because this journalist, who first never, I don't know if he's a journalist. I have never heard of him or his work. But unlike him, I would not attack him personally. Anyway, these journalists for Polygraph Info, they never contacted me. They never asked me to clarify if they have something that is not clear. They attacked me that I have not provided documents, which is a total lie. It takes just few seconds away. Just you need to Google this story, or if you don't know, I don't have the link, and it takes just few seconds to open the investigation and to read hundreds of documents proving that the same private American contractor purchased this very same lot of mortar shells, 82 millimeter mortar shells that I found and I showed in a video published by Islamic State in Yemen. This very same lot of weapons appeared in the hands of Islamic State terrorists in Yemen, and I provided documents about this. This is how actually I understood that the U.S. government arms terrorists in Yemen, based only on documents. Anyway, they just ignored the documents as I have not published it, and the only reason to attack me is simply because I was interviewed twice by Russian media. This is the only reason why they say this is propaganda. Why? Because I'm not supposed to give interviews to Russian media. Why? Because If you give interview to Russian media, you go to polygraph.com or info, and you appear to be untrustworthy journalist simply because you are open and you give and talk to Russian media. Um, I would give interview to CNN, BBC, Reuters, or The Guardian if they want me to. They don't want me to. I was contacted by some of their journalists. They never put a word about this investigation. So I will attack anybody personally. I leave people to read the documents and to judge themselves.
Yeah, and she was contacted by Reuters, The Guardian, among others, spoke at length with them and other media outlets. But to date, has any other mainstream media outlet, I know French media outlets also contacted you, Dilyana. Has anybody taken up your offer to help collaborate to get this story out?
No, no, not at all. Not at all. Um, I feel very offended by some comments by Western journalists. They told me we don't want to lose our job. They were honest. They told me, and I don't understand how these people sleep at night, how they look at themselves in the mirror, and what that matters for them. This is their job. I mean, their salary and their well-being. When their duty as human beings, as journalists, means to fight, to try do something to stop this war, to hold your government to account. They just here, it turns out that for the West, for Western media or mainstream media, this doesn't matter. The fact that the U.S. government and the Saudi government armed terrorists in Yemen or in Syria or elsewhere, it is not important. It doesn't matter because it will lose their jobs. This is what matters for them. I'm very offended, but I'm very thankful to you for giving me the opportunity and presenting this investigation and make it possible to reach Western markets. Because for now, unfortunately, the only way to spread this information is social media.
Yes, and also just we want to say again, it's a tremendous accomplishment having put all this together and put it together in such a concise and well-organized way. This is available on armswatch.com. This is a three-part series by Bulgarian independent journalist Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, and as she has testified, Mike, and as we've heard, the mainstream corporate media in the West has every opportunity to take this information and act on it and hold their governments to account in their respective countries. But that actually has not happened.
And we should probably make the point, of course, that Dilyana did an earlier investigation, was it 3 years ago now, on arms going into Syria. And Dilyana was on this program to talk about it at that time. You personally gave some of the documentation to mainstream journalists, and quick as a flash, nothing happened there either.
Yeah, I gave it to multiple. Yeah, go ahead, Dilyana.
He received awards, international awards. While if you read this article published by Polygraph Info, they accuse me of conspiracy theories and controversial investigation into this 350 diplomatic flights with weapons for Syria, for Syrian terrorists. They comment that this was not true, while mainstream media journalists, whom I provided these documents 3 years ago, they received international awards in recognition of this investigation, these documents, and these findings, and their work was internationally recognized, unlike mine. I don't want recognition. I just want, if Polygraph Info calls me a liar, then to call liars. So these American journalists as well that received international award, but it doesn't suit Polygraph Info because if they say that this was true, they must confess that all my new findings are also true. it's easier to just tarnish the reputation of somebody instead of um, being strong enough and being honest with the public whom you must serve, because journalists must serve the public, not the government. Unfortunately, this is not the case now.
Indeed. Okay.
Well,
Well,
I want to thank you very much for your contribution this week. Dilyana Gaytandzhieva, investigative journalist from Bulgaria. Thank you so much, and good luck with the rest of your investigation.
thank you, Dilyana.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to move on, unfortunately, but here we go. Just a reminder that if you would like to support the work that we do here at the UK Column, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community, and there are various options for doing that there. A quick reminder once again, Ian R. Crane is asking, is 5G safe at a whole range of events? Most of these are, he's certainly halfway down the list now. So this is Monday the 23rd. He is in Leicester tonight. Nottingham tomorrow, Ipswich on Wednesday, Cambridge on Thursday, ending up in Cardiff on the 11th of October. You had Ian on your programme last night.
Yeah, he gave a great explanation of what's at stake here with regards to the issue of 5G. He's doing a number of dates right across the country, and we're encouraging everybody to get out and see this presentation. I've seen the presentation. It's powerful. It does change the way you look at this issue, and this is also all available up online. If you can't make the physical event, you go up to Ian R. Crane, and you'll be able to access it there, but also at the Alternative View website as well. So, and there's a pay-per-view option for that, and that's also to help fund Ian's tour around the UK. He'll be hitting Scotland and Northern Ireland. He's going right around the British Isles, so it's quite an ambitious undertaking by Ian R. Crane. But he did this a few years ago with fracking as well, and I think it really paid dividends in terms of public awareness. So he's definitely counting on your support.
Okay, so the question is, what has happened to Jeremy Corbyn? Now, I'm not a particular fan of Jeremy Corbyn. I'm not suggesting that anybody should be, but it is a sensible question. Has he lost all his principles? Is really what's at the top of the list here. He was on Andrew Marr's programme on the BBC yesterday morning. He was full of globalist policy, Remain, climate change, No Child Left Behind, a whole range of other things. This is quite different to his approach. Apparently, if we go back a couple of years, this morning he was full on anti-Semitism over a poster which appeared at the Labour Party conference. Here it is, and so it's a caricature of him speaking out on Palestinian rights. So he's standing at a lectern there, speaking out on Palestinian rights, and behind him, Benjamin Netanyahu is depicted flying a plane which represents the Israeli lobby, and dropping defamation bombs. And of course, there's a speech mark there with anti-Semite, anti-Semite, anti-Semite on there, really making, the question at the left there is IHRA, tell the NEC how you feel. This is really about the definition of anti-Semitism that's been adopted by the Labour Party, or at least the poster seems to be a protest against that. But Corbyn's response to this, and I'm interested in your opinion on this in a second, Patrick, his response to this was this: I'm disgusted that this banner was displayed near our Labour 19 conference centre. We asked the police to remove it, and I'm glad they did. This kind of anti-Semitic poison has no place whatsoever in our society. And he links to that Daily Mirror report that you've just seen. And my question to you, Patrick, is, do you view that poster as being anti-Semitic?
Not at all. Not at all. If you take a look at it's a political cartoon. It illustrates the issue absolutely perfectly in the way that all good political cartoons do. It's basically questioning the faux charges of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party that had been waged against Jeremy Corbyn and the party at large for the last 2 years. And if you looked at again, I could go back to the original investigative report by Al Jazeera into the Israeli lobby in the UK, they absolutely proved that this was actually on the cards a couple of years ago, caught it on camera, and even people accepting at least pledges of bribes in that documentary film. I mean, what more do you need to know that this was a conspiracy to basically take down Jeremy Corbyn simply because of his sympathetic stance towards Palestine and to lustrate and cleanse the rest of the party of any other sympathizers on that issue?
Well, what I'm saying, Patrick, is that he has been taken down in the sense that he has done a complete U-turn on his policies that he's been presenting over the last couple of years. And my question then is that because he's been there's been some kind of backroom deal done over Brexit that he should become the interim Prime Minister should there be a government of national unity appears on the scene? But in order to do that, he has to say certain things, behave in a certain way. Is that what he's done? He's set his principles aside in order to pursue that goal?
It certainly looks like it if you base it strictly on the statements that he's making publicly, but also the fact that the anti-Semitic attack dogs have been held back at bay. They're there in the background, the hounds, but they haven't been unleashed back on Corbyn, if you notice. So there seems to have been, Mike, maybe some understanding in the back saying you need to take on board these issues, A, B, C, and D, and if you do, we'll sort of back off on our attacks on you a little bit, Jeremy Corbyn. But I think, Mike, in the long run, that's a losing strategy, because I think that those same attack dogs will come and devour Jeremy Corbyn at the opportune moment when it's time for regime change in the Labour Party. And instead of sticking to his guns, which a lot of the membership believe he should have done when this whole farrago began, he should have said, I'm not an anti-Semite, and that's a ridiculous charge, and this is why. Instead, he capitulated to the pressure and to the lobby, and then the press just had a field day. And the Tory party, everybody became a national sport, was just taking shots at Corbyn, even on the floor of the Commons. And look at him now, he's had to water down all his positions. And then the Brexit issue comes. And once again, the problem's compounded, Mike, because he's compromised on his original Brexit position, which was to respect, he said, I will respect the vote of the people, and instead, the pressure to put Remain on the Labour Party campaign manifesto, like the Liberal Democrats have done. Huge problems for the Lib Dems, even by putting that in writing, basically that they're going to campaign to stay in the EU, and Labour is looking at losing some of its heartland and in the northern constituencies as well. They could lose those. Where are those voters going to go, Mike? If Labour takes a Remain stance, they only have two places they're going to go.
Well, they're not going to go to the Tories because they're probably, multi-generational Labour supporters, so they're going to go to the Brexit Party. The
Brexit Party, who will likely be in coalition with the Conservatives. So that's throwing votes away for Labour. So I don't know how they're going to get out of this one, Mike, but they really tied themselves in a knot.
It's a pretty big hole they've dug for themselves. Okay, well, look, we're absolutely out of time, so we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us, Patrick. Thank you very much to Dilyana Gaytandzhieva for joining us earlier on. We will be back at the same time, 1 p.m. as usual on Wednesday. We will see you then. Bye-bye.